Hello, good morning, good evening for all of you joining us today. Please feel free to use the chat to introduce yourselves to the room and where you're calling in from. It's always so interesting to know where folks are actually joining us from. My name is Maria Santos, and I am the IDA Funds Program Officer. For our blind and low vision attendees, I'm going to do a visual description of myself. I'm a chubby brown woman with dark rimmed glasses and wavy black hair that's about mid-length, wearing a white button down with some pattern on it. Thanks for joining us for the third and final panel in our Logan Elevate public programming series entitled Addressing the Western Gaze, Audience, Funding, and Success. This series was developed as a part of our Logan Elevate grant that supports 3 female identifying or non-binary filmmakers of color from anywhere in the world who are working on their first or second features, and literally on the precipice of their next step in their careers. So it's a very exciting time for them. This grant is generously supported by the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation, and we're extremely thankful for their continued support. The programming you'll experience in this series comes directly from the hearts and concerns of our 3 2023 Logan Elevate grantees, Aria Rote, Pallavi Samusetti, and Janay Bolous. This year, they have all been at different stages of advancing their first or second feature films. We have seen them navigate the formidable industry and champion their individual ways of making films. But we have also shared learnings and supported each other as a way to learn strategy and best practices that they want to uphold in filmmaking. We're fortunate today to receive this offering from them. This series will hopefully help all of you learn, relate, and process through your own experiences as filmmakers or supporters of makers. It takes a lot of time and dedication to make events like this happen, so we want to thank our funds coordinator, Katie Hurley, and our events coordinator, Armando Zamudio, who have jointly produced this event for us today. We also want to thank the IDA Comms Department, who have helped spread the word about these programs, Zaf, Catalina, and Terrence. And we also want to thank Keisha Knight, the Director of IDA Funds and Advocacy. And finally, we'd like to thank our access providers, Zeke Alisea, and live captioner, Bob Laparo and Andrea Lust as our ASL interpreters. We could not do these programs without their support. So now, to today's panel, working with broadcasters, getting independent voices heard. This is the brainchild of our filmmaker and journalist, Janay Bolous. We'll add her bio to the chat. If you ever get to meet Janay in person, I hope that you're able to chat with her for a few minutes. She has a way of being able to talk to anyone at any experience level in any room and make you feel as if you're learning and teaching through a conversation. A real exchange of ideas that doesn't feel competitive or dominating. And in her knowledge and lived experiences, Janay has arrived at a point where she has a well-formed point of view to share and a film to share with us. Though her film is in development and is confidential for the time being, I can't wait until we all get to experience it. I hope to keep learning from Janay for years to come. So it's my pleasure to welcome Janay to the virtual stage so she can moderate this discussion today. A type of discussion that's often only accessed at festivals or behind a paywall. So how can we work with broadcasters but still maintain our voices in the process? Janay, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Maria. Thank you for the very generous description of me. So my name is Janay. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an Arab woman with dark brown hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt and I'm sitting in a meeting room with a turned off TV behind me. Thanks for joining the panel today. It will be an hour long, and with me are going to be Natalie, Adel, and Alex. I'll let them introduce themselves for you when they appear on the video. Yeah, we can start with you, Natalie, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Humphreys. I'm 53 and I have pale skin with freckles and pale hair. I use she and her. I'm sitting in a black top with a multicolored scarf around my neck and a dark black background. And I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Adel.
Hi everyone, thank you for hosting us. And my name is Adel, Ksiksi. I'm here behind me, bookshelves with the green shirts and gray hair of 53 years old. Thank you, and we'll be together tonight. Thank you.
And Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm sitting in my room with a lot of books behind, with a blue shirt, wearing glasses, white hair, and nothing more to add. You are welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining me. Just for those who are joining us online, today we'll discuss the difference broadcasters offer filmmakers in terms of voice and authenticity compared to festivals and theatrical releases of our documentaries. But before we go into the detail of that, we will identify the difference between a TV documentary and a festival film, how the funding model differs in each one of them, and how certain funding can give or take freedom of voice from the filmmaker. And we will add to it, if we have some time, how filmmakers can remain true to their editorial control and creativity in the face of the control that will play on them from others. So we're talking here about the broadcasting space, and I'd like you are from your documentary, which is channel or broadcaster, but we see almost every festival in the industry participating. From your experience, can you give us a differentiation between what a TV documentary is and what's a feature documentary in terms of content, pacing, storytelling, and style?
I'm so sorry, Janay. Did you direct that at me because the Wi-Fi crackled?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was asking Adel because yeah, because of his presence in Al Jazeera and festivals.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janay. Also have a bit of cracking on the Wi-Fi, I think, the same thing. But let's talk about, I'm representing here two hats, you can, two umbrellas. One of them is I'm the head of programs at Al Jazeera documentary channels, where broadcaster, you can say, more in broadcast and producing, commissioning, and acquiring documentaries for our channels 24 hours in MENA region in Arabic language. And also on the same time, I am head of industry days as a pitching forum. It happens in Sarajevo every year. So we can say I'm in a way of a broadcaster and on the same time mediator between the filmmakers and broadcasters and decision makers to make their projects real. When it comes to the broadcast, in our experience in our AGD at Al Jazeera, usually we, because we have two lines here, one of them is related to commissioning, production, you can say production, co-production, commissioning, other things. So we do we open calls twice a year, and those calls we receive projects and proposals. I think between 1,500 to 2,000 proposals every year, and from there we.
Just because we're talking about this proposal you receive, what do you think is a feature documentary with a festival release, and what's the difference between that and a traditional TV documentary?
Oh yes, in terms of this is two format. Depends, by the way. It depends also the broadcaster. If the broadcaster also they have you can say slots or strands can accommodate future documentaries, theater ones, more experimental films, festival films. It can be fit. So at AGD, for example, we have this slot. We can absorb documentaries coming from the feature films, as also from the you can say TV version or TV broadcast.
Do these documentaries differ in the style, the narration? Is there certain more space in a featured festival film than in a traditional news
Usually yes. Usually when it comes to the feature, we respect, because it's more for us in co-production, we co-produce. So it is more director cut and more creative documentary, more experimental documentaries, new talented document for filmmakers, first time for their documentaries also. We like this type of we are a bit flexible in this way, by the way, on this time, this subject itself. We are lots of flexibility there, especially when it comes to the duration. Sometimes the subject also, because if we accept the subject from the beginning, so the director is free to send it. Other things also, we treat it as a theater night, so we don't segment as the other one. So there is no segmentation at all. Is one shot if it is 90 minutes or 110 minutes. So we leave it in its original language also. We don't dub, we subtitle only if necessary also. This is how we deal with it. It is more theater slot and theater that we bring it to our audiences in MENA region in terms of features films. When it comes to, yeah.
Oh, sorry. And Natalie, if I can move to you with your experience from also coming from a broadcaster, but now as an independent producer, how do you see the difference between a creative documentary and a broadcast documentary? And has moving on from TV to becoming an independent producer allowed you to think differently about documentaries? Unmute yourself, please.
Unmuting myself would be a good start. Thank you. It's such a great question. And we always, I think, should think about audiences. So, I understand that for this panel, it's going to be really helpful, I'm sure, for a quite broad audience, I hope, that have joined today, that we can unpack the differences of how things get financed and the journey they go on, right? But any piece of content, any story starts with thinking about that audience. Who are you making it for? At the end of the day, if the answer is quite quickly for you as a filmmaker or a film team, I want the more people, most people as possible to see it. I think it's natural to want to start a conversation with a set of broadcasters, because at the end of the day, they have channels and platforms and means to get your story into as many homes as possible, in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Like I've said to you before, the clue's in the title, broadcaster. They're sending it out to a lot of people, right? So working with a broadcaster is not a bad thing if you're a storyteller and a filmmaker. Usually, if you want to take their money up front and be commissioned or end up in some kind of co-production commissioning situation, you usually start that conversation sooner. So that's one of the key differences. You think earlier about a very clear audience that broadcaster has in mind, and you start talking with them sooner, probably, in development or in early stages of development. So that would be one key thing. I think the other thing is, the way this session was sort of laid out and described is for filmmakers who are maybe at a critical stage in their own career or their filmmaking journey. And oftentimes it's tempting to sort of want to keep control, and I understand that feeling. But if you're at that stage in your career, maybe the reason why you've been supported is you've got fantastic access, for example, to something. The reason why you are the right person to tell a story is your access, not necessarily that you've made 20 films like that before. So I think nurturing that access and nurturing yourself on that journey is also a very important thing to think about, and decide, is it too soon to get into conversation with certain people? Are they the right people to get into conversation with? Will they understand your film like you do? But obviously increasingly, it's a hybrid world. I mean, films do exist on television and at festivals and get a cinema run and. So I think trying to see it as a sort of this and that scenario is quite a good idea at the early start stages.
And with regards to getting the financing, and we will go into a little bit into that and a little bit further on, but I'd also like to bring in Alex to the discussion, because he was also a broadcaster, a commissioning editor, and now he's running a fund. And from my experience, if you are, like what you said, Natalie, in a space where you're not ready to give a compromise, or you're not ready to go to a broadcaster, then funds like Alex, the one Alex is running, could be potentially a place to go. And Alex, what are the criteria for you in this selection? Are you looking for a cinematic documentary? And what do we mean when we say a cinematic documentary? Or do you still have your broadcast hat on and judging films by that sort of lens? Or have that sort of shifted a little bit since you started running DocSub Fund?
No, it's exactly the opposite. By running the fund, I have decided to feel totally free, and just to decide to focus on films that I really want to see and watch on a screen. When you are a broadcaster, and I was a broadcaster, commissioning editor, and head of the documentaries at Arte France for 15 years. So you have a lot of, how can I say, pressures, because as Adel was saying, we have slots, and it's totally different than the way an author, a director, or even a producer is thinking about a proposal he's bringing to the channel. It has to be adapted to the slot. So it's about the length, it's about the way it's going to be written, it's about the topic, it's about what you are going to say, what we have said before, what we are supposed to work on. So it's very, you know that it's not so easy, and you have a process of decision. It's not only you are calling a broadcaster and a commissioning editor and saying, okay, I have a beautiful proposal. In general, all the directors are thinking that they have a sort of, how can I say, something brilliant. It's the most urgent and brilliant proposal, and a lot of time they don't understand that the broadcaster is not following it. I remember when I was a producer and a director, and I was speaking with a broadcaster, after listening to their, how can I say, what they are planning for the year, I was totally convinced that all my projects fits totally for the broadcaster. And then after that, speaking with the broadcaster, he was explaining to me, not at all. You are mistaken. It's not what we are expecting. It's not what you have, what you are going to present. Leave it. Do something else. When I became a broadcaster and beginning to work with people that refuse to me a lot of projects as producer, I began to understand exactly how they are thinking about projects. And today I want for the fund to speak about the writing is as important as the topic and the issue. And I'm not sure that for broadcaster, the writing is as important as the topic that fits for the slot. So sometimes it's important because from the moment you are thinking and directing a movie for television or for cinema or whatever, you are thinking about the way you are going to write it, the way you are going to tell the story, that there is always a story. But sometimes it's, how can I say, the topic, the subject, the issue is more important than everything, and it fits for the slot. So the broadcaster is going to go on a project that is very important because of the subject, and he doesn't mind about the writing. And I think, and this is what I'm saying to all the directors and producers that are coming to me and asking for support, I'm not discussing the issue. Why? Because when you are speaking about human rights, all the issues are important. The difference to make us decide to support a project is by the storytelling, the narration, and the writing. This makes a huge difference, and this is the way we are deciding to support or not to support. So now, not being anymore a broadcaster, I feel really free. I don't have any slot, I don't have any, and sometimes the people are coming and they are saying, you know, the problem is that my film, it's 2 hours. And I say, wonderful, because if it's 2 hours, it's supposed to have a sort of very strong storytelling or narration that perhaps in a slot you cannot find it. So I'm saying, okay, let's speak about it. Let's see. I don't worry about the length, and I don't worry about the always about the topic. Of course, the topic is very important, and we are and we cannot repeat the same topics, and we have to see it has to be different. So this is the kind of questions we are discussing. But at the moment, a director, producer is ready to speak with a broadcaster, and the paths of the two are crossing to each other, then we can begin to speak about the same project.
And Adel, I understand you also have slots, but you also have space for more feature, more creative docs. And we talked a little bit with Alex about storytelling and the voice that's being told, how important it is for you, and how important should it be in general for the filmmaker's voice and the genuinity of the filmmaker making a film? How is that important for you when you get to choose films to commission or co-produce?
Okay, yes. Same. We have what we called here some is like criteria as a broadcaster to follow in our workflow. As a project, for example, it is a fresh project in development or in production, whatever. It must be there is originality on these stories, one of them as a criteria, and also this sense of storytelling there. It needs to be with the storytelling, especially when it comes to the production. We need the storytelling because we are channel. We represent observational documentary more than other type of documentaries. We don't host like a guide inside, so it's not usual in our channel. It's more of observational documentary style. So we need the storytelling to be very strong, the originality to be also very original. We need something not being untold stories or underrepresented place of stories that it comes first time for our audiences. It comes to Catherine when she said also, we need to consider our audiences. That's right. We have to always monitor and see exactly what our audiences are following, what they're like, between the channels and all the social platforms we have. So we follow what our audience and their taste in many regions, for example, they like to see from our channel. So what the originality, yes. The storytelling, of course, yes. And now the cinematic approach. Cinematic approach here, because we are 28 slot, we have 28 slot every week anyway, we need to fill in. So of course there is no, and with the variety of documentaries, subjects from wildlife to art, culture, to society, people and others. So some slots we must consider it more and more in terms of the cinematic approach, more in terms of storytelling, in terms of originality, in terms of more, you can say, a creative approach in treating the subject of the films. And others are just normal. For example, when it comes to the wildlife, it is more storytelling, more visual, cinematic, and other things, but maybe we'll make it a bit down some other aspects and other, for example, criteria. So it is a varies. We have two ways here, and we have two departments and two teams, you can say. One of them is working more with the production, and they have their own criteria, and we want them to encourage more the cinematic and creative documentary. And we have another place which is more acquisition, They are dealing with the content ready, so they need to be careful with what of documents they are looking for, including the production value, including the storytelling and others. So it varies a lot, by the way. It's not that easy, as Alex also mentioned. As a broadcaster, it's not that easy at all. But we have to fill in 400 hours a year. For me, is not that easy also to call and to acquire or to produce, and that's why it's not easy to find all of them at the same level. So say, for example, features or whatever. No, it will not be the same. Even for the feature, by the way, we request two versions. We request the TV version and the feature version, if possible, because we need to see exactly where we accommodate the film. At the end, we have a requirement, and those requirements, it needs to be fulfilled anyway in terms of budget and other things. I think this is how usually with the broadcasters, which I represent them now, right now, we deal with it. So we have a criteria, we have assessment, and they need to follow those assessment day by day and step by step. If it is a production and commissioning and others, so there is a treatment, and with the treatment that been agreed with it. So we need to see exactly how it's been implemented. And for the acquisition is more direct assessment on the production as it is. The product is ready, so we need to see exactly if it is fit with our requirement at the end.
Thank you, Adel. And now we go and think into, since we now kind of, I hope, created a little bit of a distinction between a broadcast documentary and a film that you want to put on TV, or a film that you want to do, for example, a festival run with. I come to you, Natalie, to kind of get a sense of, as a producer, this project you're working on. How do you decide if this is a broadcast film and hence go to get money from the broadcaster, or if this is something that you want to take to festivals? What is the certain things that make that for you? And then how does that come into work when you're thinking about funding the film?
Okay, well, I think I loved it when Alex said he felt free, because now I'm in India, I think I just feel poor most of the time. I think and I'm not making light of that, it's incredibly difficult to work in independent documentary making. On the making side, it is so hard. There are very few outlets for your film, and that includes television slots, and it includes festival outlets and distribution avenues, someone helping you get your film. It can be really hard. So I don't want to depress everybody, because that's just the reality of the genre we've chosen to work in, right? So I think I just get very practical, and I try to ask the tough questions at the beginning about what this film is and what it could be. One thing I would definitely say is, if you're still wondering at an early stage of, and I'll tell you maybe in a minute about a film that you're aware of that we're making, that might be just a helpful case study for people to stop just talking in theory. But your question, how do you know which route to go? I think the honest answer is you never really do. But what happens is, at the beginning, as you're starting to understand your film, you're trying to put this new egg into the nest and sit on it and think about how it's going to hatch. And you just have to really think hard about what the story really is, what is the story potential, and really who do we think it's going to appeal to. And if the director's got a very strong vision, and hopefully they do, that starts to answer some of that question about, where will this film play? Where could this film really be a hit? And also within our strategies, which festival are we talking about? Because again, there are so many festivals, and you can have a different target in your mind about which festival. But I think, one of the great things you can do is apply to and get into as many pitch forums as you possibly can. Certainly, and I would say that first maybe 6 months or year of you thinking, right, I really believe in this. I'm really going to go out there and try and get some support. Because for two reasons. One is the network that opens up is phenomenal, as you know yourself. All, buyers, broadcasters, funds, foundations, you know, philanthropic support. All these different people tend to come to these pitch forums and have a look at what new stories are coming down the line. So that can be phenomenally helpful. If you're lucky, you might also meet people that can give you some money or win a prize at one of the pitch forums that can put some early money into your project and just float your costs while you're working out what to do. And then I think the other thing is you might meet people that can help you make your film. You know, someone much smarter than me said, it takes a village to make a documentary. And I think that's true for every single documentary, no matter the topic, no matter the place it's being made, no matter if it's a first time or a, you know, triple Oscar winning director. It does take a village to raise that story. So having people around you is a really good idea. Don't be proud and think, oh, it's me, I must do it all myself. No, don't do it all yourself. Get as many people as you can on your team as possible. You know, some people are lucky and they're born as Mozart. They're the Mozart version of documentary and they write 2 pieces of music and it's perfect. But us humans, normal people, actually it takes years to learn the craft and have great people around you because that's how you're going to get your story out there.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think I learned the hard way that even though as creatives, as filmmakers, as journalists, we can do it all. We can film, we can edit, we can write, we can put it out online, but this is not a one-person show. This is an industry and there's people that should come on board. And every time I see a filmmaker, my first advice is always get a producer, not because I'm a producer, but because I didn't know how important that role was. And not just for fundraising, mainly for fundraising, but also for pulling this whole project together and staying on top of things, following and chasing up. And since we're talking about financing, how do you think that each film has right money for it? Or you think that I'm just going to go and pitch and take whoever's money comes to me at that early stage?
Well, there's 2 things in there. One is, I would certainly say every film that I've ever been involved in, and all the people, you know, all my friends in the industry and everything they're doing, everything is case by case. Every project, it's a different set of circumstances again. What I would say is relationships are, I don't know how much, I don't know what percentage of the game, but a lot. Okay. And that's another reason why it's worth teaming up with people, because I might know the head of a streamer, you might know, you know, a really great head of a fund. You know, between us, we might have people we can open doors for us to help us with our films. So that's really important. Is there right and wrong money? Yes, for sure. For sure. I mean, you know, if you're telling, to Alex's point, if you've got some extremely sensitive access to an incredibly, you know, difficult or risky human rights story, you bet there's the wrong money that you could put around that. And so that might take longer to find people who not just understand you as a filmmaker and how you want to tell your story, but actually would pass the test, the scrutiny test that you would put on it about whether they're the right people from, you know, perhaps an ethical standpoint. So yeah, there's a huge number of decisions involved. And that's why I think not doing it all by yourself is a really good idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to refer to Darko, who's asked the question, what's the best and most effective way to approach broadcasters when you've not worked with them? And I think, Natalie, with your point about meeting people, that would answer that is go out there, festivals, pitching, and things like that to meet these people.
And most people that run, most people who commission for documentary slots on channels, or who spot films and think about funding films from a festival point of view, or distribute films, or want to invest in films, you know, as a private investor. Most of these people are desperate for the next new thing and the next big thing, and they do not mind a very respectful email or walking up to them and saying, look, I know you don't know me, and can I just have literally a minute of your time? Or an email that says, sorry for this cold call, your name was recommended to me, can I just share these 3 lines with you about this thing, and would you be up for a conversation or a cup of tea? People who are good people don't mind that. In fact, they're thinking, oh, this might be the, you know, the next new exciting thing that I could get involved in.
And Natalie, you touched a little bit about the notion of right money and wrong money, and I want to go to Alex for the next question, because I want to hear from his experience where there were moments in his broadcast career, where you felt that there's a certain control on a film or a topic that maybe people didn't feel it's the right time for, or the voice wasn't the right voice for it, and how it's different now, that aspect when you run an independent fund? Do you appreciate more the voices that you couldn't when it was a broadcast film? Alex, please unmute yourself.
No, I never had the problem of saying we have to cancel or we have to refuse that because of the topic or the issue. It's always about the right time. In general, you know, when an event is happening in the world, you receive immediately, the day after or even a few hours after, a lot of proposals about what happened. And when you are, I was working as a broadcaster in the department with the most important way of writing documentaries, meaning geopolitics, investigation, social issues, history, society, culture, author, cinema, feature-length documentaries, everything was there. And a lot of time I was saying, it's too early. We don't have the right distance to speak about what happened. If not, it's news. It's not documentary. And there is a difference between news and documentary. A lot of time the people are confounding documentary and news, or something speaking about the reality. A documentary is speaking about the reality with adding a point of view. And that point of view, if you don't have the right distance to speak about an event, you cannot make an important documentary, or you cannot make it like that. It is taking time. So this is one thing. The other thing, of course, you have a lot of people that are involved in documentaries and that are trying to explain that that documentary doesn't have to be broadcasted because of a lot of reasons, because we are revealing things when you are speaking about geopolitics, trying to give keys about what is happening behind the cards, what happened, or the testimony of somebody, or I don't know, whatever. So you have always, and I have a lot of cases like that, speaking about Ukraine and writing a word in Russian. And so immediately you have a call from the Ukrainian embassy saying, why in that map was written Ukrainian in Russian? It's impossible. And you have to explain, you have to justify yourself, you have to say, and you have to be ready for that. And all the very delicate events in the world are under control and are today we have internet. Before it was not like that, but even on televisions, the people were writing immediately a letter to the president saying, you have broadcasted that film, that documentary. It's not true, it's wrong. And you have to immediately broadcast another document that is going to prove the opposite of what you were saying. So it's always here. But to speak about, and I'm going a little bit back about the discussion we had, you don't have so many slots today on television for feature-length documentaries and for storytelling documentaries. And when you are in a workshop, when you are in a tutoring place, when you are speaking with a lot of summer school, I don't know, camps, whatever, you find documentaries that will never find a place to be broadcasted. The only place for that kind of documentaries are festivals, museums, different places. And it's a pity, because more and more you have young directors that are telling stories, amazing stories, and there is no place for them on television. and perhaps they will succeed by going on a festival and being awarded, and then perhaps a broadcaster will be interested. But how many? How many? And even, for example, on Arte, you have 3 places for feature-length documentaries and very strong storytelling documentaries. It's La Lucarne, a very late slot after 12 o'clock in the evening, but without any problem of length. It's whatever the issue, whatever the topic. You have cinema documentary, and you have feature-length documentaries, meaning 90 minutes. But it's 3 a year for cinema documentary, 4 a year for feature-length documentaries, and 5 a year for a participation to La Lucarne. So it's so how can I say, a low number of films to be broadcasted on TV. And even for the cinematic and feature-length documentaries, the only way to broadcast them is to organize a festival of documentaries, because if not, there is no place inside the slots for this kind of film to be broadcasted on prime time, second time of the evening, or even third time of the evening. Sometimes it's after 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So it's a real problem. And to finance them, you have to, there is financing. It depends on the countries. The Nordic countries are different with funding. In France, you have the CNC that is giving a lot of money. And there is always a way to finance, but it's more and more difficult to access to the televisions. And the money and the audience are in the televisions.
And Adel, and from the perspective of Al Jazeera documentary, how do you balance the creative autonomy of the filmmaker with the needs of filling these slots and what you're broadcasting on a day-to-day? Does that come into play? So, for example, if a filmmaker wants to tell a certain film in a certain way, and that doesn't fit one of your slots, is there some sort of work around that you do, or how do you manage the filmmaker voice and the slots? Also, please unmute yourself.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Word balance of our audiences. So we need to respect part of our values here in Al Jazeera Media Network in general, to respect the audiences in MENA anyway and their needs. So we need also to make sure any documentary that comes on to be broadcasted, our channels are somehow represent and liked by our audiences. So when it comes to projects or documentaries, we select, we filter and everything. So at the end, if we agree with the filmmaker, with the treatment, with the subject, so we accept it editorially from the beginning on the first shot, so he has the freedom to work with it and without any objections at all. And by the way, if you maybe you've been working with us, Janay, before and others, so we don't have this type of things that we are nogging behind the filmmakers, do that, we don't do that. No, usually if we agree on the treatment at the beginning about the ideas of the subject, so we kick off our agreement. And then we just, when we agree, when we receive the material, we will talk about it. If there is any things is more technical side, and usually more technical about the quality and other things, is not deep. Or if the project not fulfilling what been agreed in on the treatment at the beginning, this is another matter. But first of all, we need to be balanced as a broadcaster, balance between the needs of the channels as thoughts with what we called here, we represent our audience and their needs and what they like in MENA, and also we give the freedom for the filmmakers to do their job in very very good atmosphere, you can say, free to deliver a good piece of project. That's why sometimes, by the way, I will tell you something is happening, discussion inside our channel sometimes with the filmmakers. We know these filmmakers, they can deliver today a film 9 out of 10, and tomorrow maybe his another project with him is just 3 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. It doesn't mean this filmmaker is not good or not well qualified. No, it does mean I will support him as a filmmaker, as a broadcaster, because I agree about the project from the beginning. So I need to accept all the circumstances around it. We try to help each other if there is any difficulties, anything, to make this project happens in the best way. But sometimes the project will not be delivered in how we can say 10 out of 10. No, not at all. Sometimes it's up and some other down. And this is how the documentary is working. We believe on that anyway. We give the opportunity to the filmmakers to do their best, and we help them also to deliver it in the best way. From our side as broadcasters to facilitate everything for them. But on the same time, as I said to you from the beginning, we knew exactly this project or this subject, it does fit with our requirement, which also does fit with the taste of our audiences. That's why is a mirroring, is balanced between that and here. I need also to mention something else. Even in Arab world, there is somehow mixed between people who don't understand exactly what we called documentary and what you called, for example, program on the news TV. So 2 different things. I mentioned earlier, we are more observational channels, documentary style, which doesn't work a lot with the news channels. The news, they want something is more active, more whatever you call this, more current affairs, more programs, reportage than other things. So if the reportage, for example, we call it documentaries than other things, for us is not there. So we are more in terms of documentaries. The school, we try to educate our audiences as also educate our colleagues from filmmakers and independent producers how we can make documentary, observational documentary style. It can be creative features and other things, which is a bit different from the news. Most of what we produce not being broadcasted in news channels because it doesn't fit with them, because we use more creative element there, which can't be fit with the news style anyway in some of our sister channels. I think this is how we do it. But so we need to be balanced between the audience and it happens to us also that some subjects are a bit usually when it comes to subject, because this in many regions I mentioned before, in many regions things is happening rapidly anyway. Every day there is some new events, new things, change in power, change on society, change. Everything is completely mad. Sometimes you can feel that. So some subject, because the documentary takes for us in our channel, for example, between 1 year to 2 years to deliver one documentary, and we are very patient with it. We don't need to be in a hurry. We give a lot of space to the filmmakers and independent producers to deliver the project in the best quality and the best way. Sometimes we have difficulties in the accessibility. It's not easy to access today in Sudan. It's not easy to access Syria. It's not easy to access most of the Arab world, by the way, countries. Because these complexities of the events happening, political events, and a lot of things in Palestine and many others. So we need to we give them more time to deliver better quality, and we do a lot of extend. So sometimes we extend the first appointment, the second appointment to deliver, the third appointment to deliver, with justification anyway. But we understand exactly the situation, what's happening around us. That's why we are a bit patient with it. So the audiences and the MENA region, especially with Al Jazeera, we need to be very careful and very balanced in terms how we can support the filmmakers to deliver their work because they deserve, and also how, as a channels, I need to also to feed my slots with the documentaries on time and on the best quality we can do. It's not that easy, but we try our best.
Yeah, and sometimes this delay is not just for security reasons or for certain situations. Sometimes you find that there's no funding coming in for your film, so you try and see other avenues that will delay the production of the film. And this takes me back to Natalie when we talk about how difficult it is to fund. And we've heard that there are very limited slots at the moment for creative documentaries. And you, as a producer, how do you balance between maintaining the filmmaker's voice, his or her or their initial idea of the film that was pitched in the beginning, and then when you come to finance, you might find financial hurdles along the way and some, let's quote unquote, desperation for some funding. So how do you balance between that filmmaker voice and the need to finance the film?
Look, I think the first thing to say is it's hard. And I think we should acknowledge that it's a difficult journey you go on, because as soon as you take any money from anyone, however wonderful and well-meaning and a good fit they are, they're giving you money. And usually they want something for it. And that's just a fact of life, right? So I think what happens is you become, I mean, I'm not going to waste everyone's time here talking about mindset, because I think people really want to know where the money is, right? Which we'll get onto in a minute. But there is an independent documentary maker mindset. You have to be very resilient. You have to be really good at hearing no, managing conflicts, managing relationships, understanding compromise, keeping, knowing what to fight for, and understanding that, as we've heard today, that broadcasters do also need your film to be complied. It has to be able to air on their channel and sort of fit their set of qualities and different things that go with their license to air. So it's I don't know how to say it really. It's like throwing yourself into the matrix. It's like living a kind of multi-dimensional 3D jigsaw, right? That's all I can say on that. So in terms of ways, but just to be positive for a second, there are pots of money out there. I think if let's say you've made a decision, I won't talk too much about a specific film, but we've got a film at the moment that a Tanzania, brilliant Tanzania director is making, and just to give a tiny bit of insight, that what we're doing with that is saying, okay, here's a film which is being made in partnership with an indigenous community in Africa. The story sort of touches climate change and sustainability. It touches obviously indigenous ecological knowledge. It's got people and animals in it, and and you can start to think about those themes that sit in the world of your film. And there are definitely funds out there that exist, whether it's charitable funds, private funds, philanthropy, foundations that exist to help support certain stories that hit these themes. So I think, thinking about what themes your film chimes with is a really good thought. I mean, it's really hard, this, by the way, because I don't know who's on this call, and I always go, who am I speaking to? So I actually don't know who I'm speaking to. So this might be horribly generalized, but anyway, that's what we're doing, is we're saying, okay, and then the second thing is also, you should have a fairly good idea fairly early on what your budget's going to be, more or less. Is this a film that can be made for under $500,000, for example, or is it a film that will need north of $1 million? Just to give it again, just start by thinking, and you need to understand that before you go shopping for money. Because if it's at the lower end, for example, it might be relatively easy. You might get one or two public broadcasters on board that give you a pre-sale. You might get a distributor that really believes in you to give you a small advance against sales. And you might get one or two foundations that, like you, are interested in ethnography or climate change or whatever it is, and you might be done. Hooray. If you're shopping for more money than that, it's going to be more of a jigsaw. You're probably going to have to get 10, 20 partners on board in some way or other, and it will take longer to raise the money. But there are pots of money there. I mean, yes, as depressing as it sounds to say, and it's true, there are very, very few cinema length slots on the main channels around the world. There are. But that doesn't mean you can't get your film funded. You can. And you just have to think about, are there private funds? Are there brands? Could some of the cameras be sponsored by Sony or Arri? Or, you know, there's lots of creative ways to think about how you can target pockets of money within that total budget that you're going for.
Mm-hmm. And when do you think is the right time in this process to start approaching broadcasters?
Yesterday, only because no, you never lose anything. You lose nothing by finding out what they're looking for, having a little chance, a little practice pitch, even if it's early days. For you lose nothing by having conversations. And the more informed you are about, and again, you know where all the main. If we're talking purely about feature docs at the moment, you know where the cinema slots exist, or you should. It will take 5 minutes to think. All the main territories, you know, UK, all the European countries, US. Japan, Middle East, EMEA, Africa, where are the main countries that program documentary at feature length? You can probably write that list in an hour with a cup of tea, and then do some research about what they're showing right now. Are they putting out any information online about what they're looking for on their next funding cycles? And then who can help you get, if I'm talking, this is now directed at people that maybe haven't pitched to these slots before. Who do you know in your network? Can they tap their networks for you? Can you just make 1 or 2 approaches that aren't completely cold to 1 or 2 people and see if they'll give you? And one of the best things I learned is sometimes asking people for advice is better than saying, can I come pitch you? Because if you say, you know, I'm a filmmaker from wherever part of the country or the world, I've got this thing. Honestly, I'll be honest with you, I'm starting out. I'm trying to get people to support my film. I'd love to get your advice. I noticed that you were part of, and then insert name of film that maybe just won Tribeca or something. You know, I noticed that you programmed this film and it did really well, and I'd love to get some advice from you. And most people, if they're not, insert bad word, would be nice to you, or at very least say, I'm too busy, but try, you know, John Smith or whatever. But it's hard, you know, it is hard. I mean, somebody gave me a mug the other day and it's got written on it, yes, I am still making my bleep documentary, exclamation mark, you know, and that's the world you're in, right? So we have to stay cheerful. That's my approach. Keep smiling.
Yeah, that's a very good approach. Thanks, Natalie. And Alex, from a funder perspective, do you, when you receive a project, do you ever think of who are the other people that have financed, who's involved already in the project? Do these influence your decision to grant some funding to a film and not the other?
Not at all. I'm not considering anything but only the project. And I don't want to read a very long, how can I say, description or written proposal. I just want to see images. So this is the reason I'm asking, and no rushes. I want to see an edited seconds, at least 10, 15 minutes, because it's giving me the intention and the way the story is going to be told. And again, just a few words. What is interesting to be in touch with a broadcaster, more and more in the pitching session, you have 2 proposals. You have a 52 minutes for television, and you have 90 minutes length for festivals and whatever, theatrical. And so I think if a broadcaster is interested in a 52, it can give you money just to prepare the 90 minutes. And so, and even sometimes it's a 26 minutes that is interesting him. And so I think it's worth to speak with a broadcaster about a project and to try, and that doesn't mean that he's going to take your 90-minute feature length, but it's interesting just to have the reaction and to see how much the intention is interesting. And after that, to develop whatever you can develop, because not all the broadcasters have money to develop projects, because they have only the money when they are developing, they want the project to be produced. And sometimes in Arte, more and more you have money just to develop. And after the development, you can say, no, we will not co-produce, but it's very rare. So when you are deciding to give money for development, it's because you want to co-produce after that. And no, I'm not reacting about, I'm reacting about the people who are in the team, about the intention, about the way they are writing. But I will never ask if they have all the money to make the film. I will just give them the push and a small amount of money just to be allowed to go further. Sometimes it's a very small amount. It's just for 1 week shooting. That I'm trying just to answer to the immediate need, and not to say, okay, you have to come back to me with 55% of the budget, and then after that to have 2 broadcasters and 3 countries, and the director is not from the country where is going to be directed and the story is told. So no, it doesn't work. No, there is no rule. It's totally open, and I'm not taking any right, and I'm not expecting any return of the money. So it's really a sort of confidency between the producer and the director. And this is the way I want to work. It's not easy because if you don't have the money, you can't give the money. So I'm looking for the money too. And it's not obvious even for me to get the money, because everybody's saying, wow, it's an amazing project, what a fund, okay, what you have made, wonderful. But then after that, when they need to participate to support the people can support films, it's very difficult to support a project, a global project.
Okay, that's very interesting. I'm going to take a few questions from the Q&A. Darko, he asks, what steps should filmmakers take if they want to produce and market internationally while retaining the rights as producers for future or parallel distribution? So basically he's wanting to understand, how do you go about marketing your film internationally while retaining your rights? So I'm not sure if maybe Alex, you can, Alex or Adel, if you can give some advice on rights when somebody co-produces with a broadcaster and some rights are taken. How do you continue to have certain autonomy over the story and control?
Adel, you want to answer? Concerning the rights, in general, for the international market, you need a distributor. The distributor is going to share the rights with the broadcasters, and he's going. Of course, if you have some contracts with the broadcasters, for example, that you can discuss and you can postpone the broadcasting of your movie if you want to bring it to different festivals before being broadcasted, because when your film is broadcasted, it's more difficult for the festival to take it. They want a premiere, they want whatever, so it's more difficult. It's a discussion, open discussion with the channel, trying to postpone the broadcasting, because the channel wants a program. They need films for their slots, and you want to promote your film in the most important festivals in the world. It's a totally different approach. The distributor is going to deal with everybody and to share the rights between everybody. But after that, a distributor is taking money for that, and it depends. You have to be aware, not losing all the rights. You can discuss with a distributor only about certain territories. You can keep other territories. It depends. It's really open. But if you don't know the market, if you don't know to who to speak, you need someone who is going to take money and to make the work for you.
Can I add, Janay, also to what Alex mentioned? When it comes to the broadcaster, usually with the co-production, we part of the negotiation here on co-production, because already it could be there is some distributor there or not. We can negotiate from the beginning about the window of the festivals. So usually what we do, part of the negotiation, part of the agreement we sign the contract, this window anyway, the window of 6 months or 1 year of festivals before, as broadcaster to broadcast. Alex mentioned, because this is what the right we need. The broadcaster, they need to fill in their slots, so they will not keep waiting for long before the film to be released for the broadcast. Most of the broadcasters, if you see in Europe and others, so there is a window, some of them with the conditions, like, for example, on the same budget year, negotiate the customer and to see exactly how you can fit this window of festivals between 6 to 1 year, usually for our case. And we see exactly how we can, depends also the rights. I'm taking the rights of MENA region, the distributor for the MENA, so exclusively for MENA as a broadcaster. If there is any festivals worldwide during those 6 months before we broadcasted, it will be respected anyway in negotiation, when we negotiate the all rights before we sign the contract.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I want just to give one example. The example is about the film of Raoul Peck, I'm Not Your Negro. I'm Not Your Negro was broadcasted by Arte, France. And at the moment we decided to broadcast it, Raoul Peck asked for screening to theatrical. And then in general in France, before going to theatrical, when the money comes from the broadcaster, we have to assume all the rights we took and we paid for the movie before we allowed the film to be released on theatrical. Then Raoul Peck refuses, and then we broadcasted it once, and we lost all the different rights we had for the movie, because 2 weeks after the first broadcasting, he was released on cinema. And all the people forgot totally that film was made by television and not for cinema. And everyone was asking, when will that film be broadcasted on television? Because of the topic and the issue, it was totally the opposite. So I'm telling the discussion about the rights broadcaster has, it's a negotiation that has to be discussed from the beginning, and you have to be clear about the film you are doing and the money you are taking, because sometimes you are taking the money and after that you want to release the film in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks, Alex. We've got a few questions about treatments, and that's everyone's real struggle. From Ramel, they're asking if there are any readers that can help with reading the treatment or writing the treatment. How do we learn more about how to write a treatment? And there's also a question from Glenn, who's curious to know how we write a film script during the pitch phase if we haven't interviewed the subjects of the film yet. So I think, Natalie, from your experience, what's the role of the treatment? How do we write the treatment? When do we write the treatment? And is it set in stone?
Well, we could definitely dedicate a whole hour just to this one question, I think. So very quickly, what I said earlier about trying to get onto some pitch forums or to find some forums that offer mentorship, mentor support, maybe a few months of a workshop where someone will take you in and you'll be part of a group and you will get to work up your story materials, can be incredibly powerful. And particularly if you are a first or second time filmmaker, game changing. I think I've seen that, because you will be working with 2 or 3 people who are probably further along than you in their careers and can work up your story materials with you. So that's a thought. Also, there are other industry, depending on where you live in the world, there are other industry organizations that offer mentoring and coaching, skills-based organizations or certain film and television charities that, so I would look at all of those and think, is there someone I can get partnered with that might help me with a very specific thing, which is helping me work up my story materials just now. So that's one thought there. And then what was the second question? Is how important
is the treatment set in stone? So, for example, if you write a treatment for a documentary, are you married to life for?
Well, we're going. No, I would say no. I think it's a journey. We're going through that just now. The film we're making in Tanzania is a perfect example of this, which is it's observational, it's embedded documentary, it has characters. They happen to be 3 young people, children. And so obviously, rightly, the director, it's not scripted, it's not fiction. The director's not going to sit today and say exactly what's going to happen in the lives of these kids in the next 2 years. That's true. And you can say that at the top of your thing. However, if you want anyone to jump in with you, you have to paint a picture of what your thoughts of your proposed story are. Who are these characters? What world are they in? What I use this phrase, story gates. What gates are they likely to have to pass through as their story continues? What's their background, and what does this tell us about what they might be facing as challenges and experiences in the coming time? You have to still say how you think the beginning, middle, and end of your film might pan out, because otherwise it's a black hole, and you're asking people to jump into a black hole with you, and they just can't. So yeah, I think your story treatment is everything, actually, and people understand that it evolves. But you have to start somewhere by saying, look, I've got a really clear idea that if things go the way I think they will, I'm imagining this, and this is going to happen in the time frame that I'll be following, these characters.
And Alex, is this one of the reasons why you prefer to see edited scenes and see some visuals from the film instead of reading the material?
Yes, people. You have some people that are writers, and you have some people that are filmmakers. And if we are speaking about films, we need to be a filmmaker. Sometimes people are filmmakers and writers, and a lot of people cannot write. And the treatment is important, but the Anglo-Saxon people, they are presenting a very short version of the treatment and the intention. In France, it seems that more you write and more the film is supposed to be good. So even for the channels, they are expecting so many, how can I say, pages of a treatment that you are totally exhausted after reading 50 or 40 pages about the film. This is the reason I went with the Anglo-Saxon people. Very clear, a short presentation, but a treatment. Natalie, it's very important, you told it. Without a treatment, even if you invent a treatment, nobody is going to say, but you were speaking about that character and I cannot find it in the film. Where is he? Nobody is going to say that. But if we don't have a treatment or the story of a few characters, even if you are going to change after that, we cannot understand. And don't mistake, we are not expecting a Wikipedia proposal. We are expecting a treatment with a very strong story and a topic, an issue. So all that combination make that a broadcaster or whoever is going to say, I want to see that film, or I want to see that intention. And yes, images are revealing everything. Mm-hmm. When you watch images, okay, everything is becoming obvious, and people are saying, okay, I have a good teaser, and I have 40 minutes, so I'm saying, send me the 40 minutes and the teaser. So I'm watching the teaser and the 40 minutes, and the 40 minutes are revealing the way they are shooting, they are telling, they are writing, they want to narrate everything. So that makes a huge difference.
Mhm. We have a question, if you have any specific advice for emerging filmmakers with completed projects that they want to sell. So the question here, I think, from an emerging filmmaker who has a few finished documentaries, and I think we touched on that a little bit, Natalie, when we said it's not a one-person show, and what do you do when you're an emerging filmmaker and you go and you do everything and you have a finished documentary, then what?
Well, first of all, congratulations, amazing. Well done on finishing your film. That just sounds great that you've got something that is ready, you know, that you consider finished, and you could share. I mean, depending on where you are and where you live and that kind of thing, and where you want your film to be seen, then definitely get in touch with one or two producers, production houses, and also one or two distributors who you just sense from their catalogue or from their website, you know, might give you a conversation, might be a good fit and might like your film. And then, you know, it will be a case of you just will have to get into that conversation of what are you ideally trying to do with this film? Are you trying to put it on a path toward a particular festival? Are you trying to get, you know, a cinema deal for it? Are you wanting it to be seen on a few channels around the world, or a streamer, or what, you know, what would you like and what help do you need? But also I'd say be prepared for people to have views, you know, because it's an industry of people, of opinionated people, as we know, and they might look at your film and they might have great ideas for it, and notes to offer you, and they may think that it isn't as finished as you think it is. But listen, if you've got something that is a cut that you can share, you're in a brilliant situation, and it's just about identifying some people that might help you take it to market.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Adel, I'd like to ask one of the questions here to you, because it's about how broadcasters communicate when there's a couple of them or 3 or 4 co-producing. So, for example, if AJD is co-producing with POV and with SVT and all these broadcasters, how do you negotiate, or do you negotiate together on the timing of the release?
Yes, thank you for this question. Usually what we depends the project when being pitched. If the pitch, for example, says, okay, the deliverables of the film, it will be on that day in 2025, mid of 2025. So we agree this is 2025. So when it comes to now to on the communication like details, we don't see, to be honest with you, a lot in terms of the producer will come to us and said, okay, I negotiate. This is how it's happened in reality. I negotiate. We have 4 partners inside this project. So RT, for example, will take first because they spend that money and they want to broadcast on that day. We, as Al Jazeera, maybe we spend not that much because we spend only for the MENA rights. And this is, I need to clarify it for everyone, that my channel, for example, when we said to how much we invest there, we invest, so we buy rights here. So the rights we buy it's also for the MENA, which is a limited regions, is not very big regions. So that's why when it comes to negotiation with our partners, the producer will lead that. The production company means will lead that. They lead that in terms of said, okay, if you are okay, can you broadcast it 2 months after this partner or that partner or whatever, or before, it depends. The most important for us, no one can broadcast in MENA region, our territories before us. This is the most important for our part as a beginning. But when is very easy, it depends how it works. The window of festivals, if there is windows, will be applied for everyone. So everyone within that window will respect it, and then after that, we see exactly who broadcast before that the others, because it's completely different language, different territories, and different audiences. So it's a bit even the accessibility will not be seen from the MENA in the Europe or from Europe to in MENA. So it depends how we fit, and the production company will lead that anyway in terms of who's doing what.
I think that's been a very interesting conversation, and we can continue to talk for hours and hours about this. But I'd like to thank you, Natalie, Adel, and Alex, for joining me in this panel. It's been a pleasure to prepare for this with you and to work with you, and Maria and Keisha and everyone from the IDA for supporting me and facilitating this. Maria, I'd like to invite you back if you're around.
Of course. Thank you so much, Janay. This was incredible. And also, I just have to like give it up for your moderation skills. I feel like we have like 3 titans in a room and you were able to just hold all of the questions and information. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And certainly, I just want to make sure that we thank, again, our access providers who are with us here today, Zeke, Bob, and Andrea. We're always very, very grateful for your help. Thank you all for joining and staying with us for like an hour and a half. You know, if your questions weren't answered today, we're very open to following up with you all. And then there will be a survey that's sent out this week just to get sort of an experience of what you all experienced today and any feedback that you have for us and the panel and how you were able to access it as well. So there will be an audience experience survey sent out to you this week, and fill it out as much as your capacity allows. But thank you again, all of you, for joining us today, for giving us this knowledge. Take care, and we will see you again, I'm sure, in the IDA virtual space and otherwise. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
Bye.
to you. Thank you.